You know, you probably already know that the pharmaceutical industry is, well, it's one of the most heavily regulated spaces on the planet.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Right, like you hear about the grueling clinical trials, the FDA approvals, the endless safety reviews, all that public-facing stuff.
Yeah, the things that make the evening news.
Exactly. But there is this invisible layer underneath all of that, a sort of digital backbone that essentially dictates whether a life-saving medication is actually safe to consume.
Right. Or whether it needs to be immediately pulled from shelves worldwide.
Yeah. I'm talking about the software running the machines at the manufacturing plants, the databases tracking the raw materials, the automated systems releasing the final batches.
And, we place an enormous amount of blind trust in those systems.
We really do.
I mean, when you pick up a prescription at the pharmacy, you just assume the digital infrastructure behind it is flawless.
You don't even think
Right.
about it.
Exactly. But in the life sciences industry, trust isn't just a feeling. It has to be engineered. It has to be proven and exhaustively documented.
Which brings us to our mission for today. So, welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a really comprehensive guide today. It's titled Best Practices and Challenges for Computerized System Validation in Pharma.
Yeah. And it's written by Omer Suman, who is the CEO and co-founder of Validfor, which is a digital validation platform.
Right. And look, if you work anywhere near life sciences, IT, or compliance, you already know that computerized system validation, or CSV as we'll call it, it can be a massive headache.
Oh, it's the bane of many IT departments.
It really is. But this guide, it doesn't just, list out the rules like a boring manual. It actually exposes why traditional validation methods are actively breaking right now.
Yeah, breaking under the weight of modern cloud infrastructure and these incredibly complex data pipelines.
It's a fascinating read.
It really is, because it takes a subject that usually just drowns in bureaucratic acronyms and it anchors it to the literal life and death stakes at play.
Totally.
It shows us the mechanical breakdown of why keeping these systems compliant is so incredibly difficult right now.
So whether you are, gearing up for a brutal compliance audit yourself, or you're trying to understand the bottlenecks in your company's software deployment, or maybe you're just insanely curious about the hidden safety nets protecting the medicine in your own cabinet,
What?
we have got you covered today.
It's going to be a good one.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we get into the modern challenges, we need to establish the baseline, right? Like what CSV actually is, and more importantly, how it operates as a safety mechanism.
Right. So at its core, computerized system validation is this rigorous, documented process. It's about proving that the software and hardware used in pharma operations do exactly what they are designed to do.
No surprises.
Exactly. Consistently, safely, and without unintended side effects. And the Validfor source really emphasizes that this covers the entire life cycle of a drug's production.
So from the very beginning.
From the second a barcode is scanned on raw chemical materials at the loading dock, all the way to the algorithm controlling the temperature of a massive bioreactor, down to the digital signature platform that the quality lead uses to say, yes, approve this final batch.
I've always liked thinking about it through the lens of commercial aviation.
Well, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, like imagine an aerospace company is rolling out a brand new model of a commercial jet. Before that plane is ever allowed to take on a single passenger, they don't just, kick the tires and say it looks good.
Right, they'd be shut down instantly.
Exactly.
Right.
They run a rigorous, exhaustively documented stress test on the avionics, the software actually flying the plane.
Right, they simulate sensor failures, extreme weather.
Exactly. They test the autopilot under extreme conditions, and they document every single potential point of failure. So CSV is essentially that exact same stress test, but the airplane here is the digital data, the logs, and the reporting systems protecting the chemical quality of a drug.
That's a great way to visualize it, really, especially because a failure in either scenario, the airplane or the pharma plant, has catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, real human cost.
Because in pharma, the core currency isn't just the physical pill. The core currency is data integrity.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, in a highly regulated space, a lapse in data integrity isn't just a computer glitch where you sigh and reboot your machine.
Right.
Let's say a temperature sensor's software has a tiny rounding error in its code.
Okay.
It records a bioreactor as being 37 degrees Celsius when it was actually, say, 37.4 degrees.
Which, that sounds incredibly minor to the average person.
Right, a fraction of a degree. But in biologics, That slight temperature deviation might cause the proteins to fold incorrectly.
Oh, wow.
So the software says the batch is perfectly fine, but the physical product is now completely ineffective. Or worse, it's toxic.
Because of a rounding error in the code.
Exactly. That single software error triggers a massive multi-million-dollar product recall. It triggers severe warning letters from regulatory bodies. You are quite literally dealing with patient safety. And that is why the mechanism of validation is so unforgiving.
And Omer Simon's guide makes a really compelling point here, I think. Because validation isn't purely just a defensive maneuver to avoid disaster, right?
No, not at all.
A mature validation life cycle actually streamlines a company's operations.
It's a huge operational advantage.
Right, because when you have validated systems, you have this deep architectural understanding of your own technology.
You actually know how your own house is built.
Yeah. You dramatically reduce your unplanned system downtime.
Mm-hmm.
And when you inevitably have to patch or update that software, you already have a clear blueprint to reassess and requalify the system with minimal disruption.
Because you aren't guessing how the system should behave. You have the baseline already documented.
Right.
And of course, we have to view all of this through a very strict regulatory lens.
Always.
The source specifically points to major regulations, like the FDA's 21 CFR Part 11.
That's a big one.
Oh, it's massive. And also the European Union's Annex 11. These are the legal framework that dictate the exact mechanisms for how electronic records and electronic signatures have to be handled.
To be considered legal.
Right, to be legally equivalent to a physical paper record signed in permanent ink.
Which basically means regulators are demanding proof that your digital systems are as permanent and tamper-proof as a physical logbook locked in a steel vault.
That is the perfect transition into what the regulators actually came about, honestly.
Okay, let's get into the audit side.
Yeah. When an FDA inspector walks into a pharmaceutical manufacturing plant, their expectations basically revolve around three absolute pillars:
Which are?
demonstrable control, complete traceability, and highly secure audit trails.
Okay, let's break those down. What does that actually look like in practice during an audit? Like, put me in the room.
Okay, let's use the software managing that bioreactor we just talked about.
The one with the potential rounding error?
Exactly.
Yeah.
An inspector doesn't just want to see that the software interface turns on and looks pretty. They want to pull the audit trail. They want to see a secure, time-stamped, completely tamper-proof log of every single action taken on that machine.
Every single click.
Every click. They want to see that at exactly 2:14 p.m., a specific operator logged in using unique two-factor authentication.
Wow. Okay.
They want to see that the operator changed the agitation speed from, say, 50 RPMs to 60 RPMs. They want to see the reason entered for that change.
So there's no anonymity.
Zero anonymity. And crucially, they want absolute proof that a system administrator couldn't just go into the back-end database later that night and silently delete that record to cover up a mistake.
They want the receipts, and they want them immediately.
Immediate audit readiness. That is the term used in the industry.
Audit readiness, right?
If an inspector asks for the validation documentation for your laboratory execution system, and your IT team spends 3 days scrambling through shared network drives trying to find the right test scripts,
You're doomed.
you already failed. The trust is gone.
No.
And if your systems are found lacking, the FDA issues what is known as a 483 observation.
And what exactly is that?
It is a formal notice of noncompliance. It's public. It is a massive hit to a company's reputation, and responding to it drains immense resources.
Now, I want to push back on the underlying premise here just a little bit.
Okay, go for it.
Because we hear constantly in every industry that software and automation are supposed to simplify our lives.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the sales pitch, yeah.
Right. A company spends millions of dollars on a new enterprise resource planning system, an ERP, specifically to remove human error, automate workflows, speed up production.
Exactly.
But the Validfor guide says the documentation burden and the execution of CSV is this massive hurdle. So we are taking a tool designed for speed and burying it in months of compliance red tape.
Yes, we are.
Where is the ROI there? Why is this so insanely difficult for modern companies to execute efficiently?
That right there is the defining paradox of modern life sciences IT. And the guide lays out the mechanical reasons why this happens.
Okay.
It's not just about the volume of paperwork. It's about the complexity of the data flow.
The data flow.
Right. Because we aren't talking about validating a standalone desktop application anymore. Modern pharmaceutical manufacturing relies on deeply, deeply integrated platforms.
Okay, walk me through what that integration actually looks like. Where does the validation break down?
Sure. Imagine a high-end mass spectrometer in a quality control lab.
Okay, a big piece of lab equipment.
Right. It takes a reading of a chemical sample. That instrument sends its data to a local server.
Got it.
Then an API and application programming interface takes that local data and pushes it to a massive cloud-based ERP system that's hosted by a third-party vendor offsite
Okay, so data is moving around.
constantly. And then that ERP system triggers an automated workflow to generate a certificate of analysis.
Right,
Now, to validate that system, you can't just test the mass spectrometer in the lab.
because it's connected to everything else.
Exactly. You have to validate the entire end-to-end flow of data across multiple interfaces. If the API drops a single data packet during the handshake with the cloud server, the whole chain is compromised. Testing every possible failure point across all those integrated systems stretches IT and quality resources incredibly thin.
So you're basically validating the bridges between the systems, not just the systems themselves.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
That makes total sense. But the source also mentions cross-department silos as a major bottleneck.
Oh, human nature.
Yeah. How does corporate structure actually get in the way of software testing?
Well, it happens when the groups responsible for the system just don't speak the same language.
Meaning what exactly?
Well, you have the IT department, right?
Hey.
They are focused on server uptime and network security.
Right, making sure the lights are on.
Exactly. Then you have quality assurance, who are hyper-focused on strict FDA compliance and mitigating risk.
The rule followers.
Right. And then you have the end users, the actual scientists and floor operators, who just want a system that is fast and easy to use so they can do their jobs.
So IT builds the highway, quality right to the speed limits, and the scientists are just trying to drive the car, but nobody looked at the map together before they started building.
That is a very, very accurate way to frame it. If those three groups aren't communicating closely during the initial design phase, the IT team builds a system based on incomplete assumptions.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Yeah, by the time it gets to the testing phase, the scientists realize, hey, this doesn't fit our actual workflow. Or quality realizes it lacks a critical audit trail feature.
And then what?
The system fails validation, and the company is forced into massive, expensive rework.
That is brutal. And add to that the resource constraints mentioned in the guide.
Yes.
Because finding someone who understands complex cloud software architecture and the tiny nuances of 21 CFR Part 11, that's like finding a unicorn.
They're very rare and very expensive.
Right. Most companies don't have enough skilled validation engineers on staff, so they have to rely heavily on external consultants, which just drives up the cost even further.
And keep in mind, the target is always moving.
Right. The technology changes.
And the regulatory evolution itself is a constant hurdle. The FDA and the European Medicines Agency, they regularly update their guidance to keep pace with new tech, like the shift toward cloud computing.
So the rules change while you're playing the game?
Constantly.
Ah.
That means pharma companies are stuck in this cycle of conducting continuous gap assessments. They're constantly checking their older legacy systems against the newest regulations to ensure they are still compliant.
Okay, let's take a breath and look at where we are right now.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. The stakes are incredibly high patient safety, FDA 483s, massive recalls. The hurdles are steep. You've got complex API integrations, isolated departments, a shortage of engineers, and constantly shifting rules.
Yep, that's the landscape.
So a pharma company has to somehow navigate all of this without grinding their production to a halt. They clearly need a highly structured blueprint.
They absolutely do.
Right.
Because you cannot validate every single piece of software in a global company to the exact same excruciating level.
Right, you'd never get anything done.
It would take decades and you'd go bankrupt. This is where the source introduces the absolute necessity of a risk-based approach.
Meaning you apply your resources where the danger is actually the highest?
Correct. Before you write a single test script, you conduct a formal risk assessment. You categorize your systems.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, the software tracking employee vacation time of the HR department does not get the same scrutiny as the automated batch release software controlling a life-saving cardiac drug.
Obviously.
Right. You apply the heavy, exhaustive validation resources strictly to the high-impact areas that directly touch product quality, data integrity, or patient safety.
And to orchestrate all of this, the guide talks about creating a validation master plan, or a VMP.
Yes.
This is the foundational document. It defines the scope of the systems being validated, it assigns those cross-functional roles we talked about earlier, and establishes the specific methodology for the testing.
The VMP is your anchor. And once that strategy is defined, the industry standard for actually executing the validation is a framework known as the V model.
The V model?
Yeah, it's a sequential, highly structured approach to testing software.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Looking at the sources breakdown of the V model, I want to conceptualize this for our listeners.
Sure.
Let's imagine a company is installing a highly complex, custom-built software robot,
Okay, I like it.
like an automated process algorithm designed to scrape lab data, verify it, and automatically release batches of medicine without any human intervention.
High risk.
Very high risk. So the V model is how we prove this algorithm won't accidentally approve a toxic batch.
Yeah.
Walk us through the mechanics of those steps.
Let's follow that software robot right through the V model. The first major step is design qualification, or DQ.
DQ.
Right. And here, we aren't testing code yet. We're
No.
sitting at a table reviewing the software architecture and the blueprints from the developer. We're asking, does this technical design actually meet our user requirement specifications, our URS?
So if our requirement is that the system must support 21 CFR Part 11 electronic signatures, the DQ phase is literally just checking the developer's blueprint to ensure there is actually a secure database built to store those signatures.
Exactly.
You are catching architectural flaws before any coding or installation even begins.
Exactly. It saves so much money. So once the design is qualified, we move to the installation phase. This is installation qualification, or IQ.
IQ, okay.
The software is delivered and deployed onto the company's servers. IQ is the documented proof that it was installed correctly.
So it's like unboxing it and making sure all the parts are there.
Pretty much. Did we install version 2.1, or did the vendor accidentally send version 2.0? Are the network configurations correct? Are the server's operating systems actually compatible? Is the database communicating with the application layer?
It's verifying the environment.
Right.
Which naturally leads us to step 3, which is operational qualification, or OQ.
Yes.
And this is where we finally turn the software on and test its actual functions. But the guide emphasizes that OQ isn't just about making sure the software works when you use it perfectly. It's about boundary testing and error handling, right?
That is a critical point. The FDA loves to see robust boundary testing. In OQ, we want to know what the software robot does when things go horribly wrong.
Right.
If an operator is supposed to input a dosage amount and they accidentally type letters instead of numbers, does the system safely reject the input with a clear error message? Or does it crash the database and corrupt the entire batch record?
Oh, wow.
If someone literally unplugs the network cable right in the middle of a save operation, does the software recover the data gracefully?
You're trying to break it.
We are documenting that the system operates securely, even under severe stress.
And if a test fails during OQ, you don't just, quietly fix the code or run it again.
No, absolutely not.
You have to document the failure as a deviation, right?
Yeah.
You have to write a whole report on why it failed, prove you fixed the root cause, and then rerun the test. It is incredibly meticulous.
It is.
Which brings us to the final major step, performance qualification, or PQ.
Right. So PQ is the real-world stress test. We take our automated batch release software, put it in the actual production environment, and run it under expected, everyday heavy loads.
The real deal.
Yeah. Does it perform consistently when 50 different scientists are logged into the system simultaneously? Does it generate the certificate of analysis correctly using real live production data over an extended period of time?
It's proving that the system holds up in the messy reality of a busy manufacturing plant, not just in some sterile IT testing lab.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the V model provides this beautiful logical progression from design all the way to real-world performance.
It's very thorough.
It is.
Yeah.
But the Validfor guide makes a crucial point that companies often miss. The V model is not a one-and-done event.
You don't just sign off on the PQ, high-five the IT department, and walk away for the next 10 years.
Far from it. True compliance requires a continuous loop of vigilance. You have to compile every single test script, every deviation, and every corrective action into a massive validation summary report.
Why so much paper?
Because in the eyes of the regulators, if it isn't documented, it simply didn't happen.
Wow. The documentation is the product just as much as the medicine is.
It really is. It's proof of quality. And to maintain that compliance over time, companies have to commit to periodic reviews.
Okay, what does that involve?
Maybe once a year, or once every 2 years, you formally reassess the system. Because over time, software gets security patches, server hardware gets upgraded, and the underlying business processes naturally shift.
Right. Things change.
A periodic review is a formal mechanism to confirm that despite all those micro changes over the past year, the system hasn't drifted out of compliance and still meets its original validated state.
So what does this all mean? Like when we zoom out from the technical weeds of the V model, the API integrations, the FDA 483s, what we are really talking about is the ultimate translation of digital code into tangible patient trust.
Exactly.
Computerized system validation is so much more than an IT checklist. It is the defensive mechanism that ensures the medicine we rely on is safely manufactured.
It's a shield.
Yeah. By anticipating the challenges of cross-department silos and following a strict risk-based methodology, pharma companies are able to turn incredibly complex software into a guarantee of safety.
They are building a defensible, auditable program that actively protects human lives.
Yeah.
And yet, looking at this source from Validfor, it raises a really important question that kind of challenges the entire foundation of what we've just discussed.
Wait, really? How so? Where is the friction?
Well, the source mentions that Validfor itself provides products like Validfor AI and operates under policies like contextual AI.
Okay.
And this forces us to look at the immediate future of the industry. Because the entire V model we just mapped out, the rigorous step-by-step documentation,
Yeah.
is built for static, predictable software.
Right. You write a rule, test it, it stays the same.
Exactly. You write a rule, you test the rule stays exactly the same forever. But as pharmaceutical platforms become increasingly driven by self-learning, adaptive artificial intelligence, how does that rigid validation framework survive? How do you apply the V model to a software system that is specifically designed to learn from new data and rewrite its own operational behavior over time?
Oh, wow. If our automated software robot from the analogy is constantly redesigning its own batch release algorithm to be more efficient based on machine learning, how do you prove to an FDA inspector that it's still safe without essentially revalidating the entire system every single morning?
That is the paradox.
That's crazy.
The regulations demand predictable, repeatable, lockdown control. AI, by its very nature, is dynamic and evolving.
Right.
Reconciling those two realities, finding a way to validate continuous learning, is going to be the next great frontier for the life sciences industry.
That is a massive paradigm shift. And it really changes the way you look at that little pill in the pharmacy, doesn't it?
It really does.
The invisible digital backbone keeping it safe is already incredibly complex, but it is on the verge of becoming something entirely new.
Exciting but daunting.
Definitely. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you take a medication, or even just update an app on your phone, keep questioning the invisible systems that run the world around you.
There's always more going on than you see.
There is always a deeper layer to explore. Until next time.